Hi, everyone. I am here today with my longtime client, Chris, and I'm super excited to have him on today to talk about his journey and to be able to share his experience that he had working with me. And so let's dive right into it, Chris. Chris, I want to talk about first, what were some of the things that you were struggling with whenever we had first met, right? So if you kind of go back to before we met in the gym, as far back as you can think of, really, whenever you started on your journey, what were some of the things that you were really struggling with that were holding you back from getting you to where you're at today?
I mean, the main thing was just was discipline. I mean, what finally drove me to to join the gym and connect with you as a personal trainer was just reaching the point where I just could not stand to see myself in pictures. It was like just a reminder. I hadn't stepped on a scale in years because I just didn't want to know what it said because I
Right.
knew it wasn't good. So, and anybody who's kind of let themselves go understands that. You ask anybody what they weigh, if they're not taking care of themselves, they're not going to know. They can ballpark it, but they probably haven't stepped on a scale in years.
Right.
Um, so, the main thing I was lacking at that point was education, knowledge, and discipline. And I knew that the best way to get that was to connect with a personal trainer. And I was fortunate enough to connect with you.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And that's awesome, right? And so, back in the day, you were talking about how you wouldn't even want to step on the scale. And so did you have an idea of where you were at that point in time? Like at your kind of like when you were at your worst mentally and physically, do you have an idea where you're at?
You mean weight wise?
Yeah, weight wise.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you and I first started working together, I mean, that was part of the process was to get some marks about where you are. And my weight was around 220,
Okay.
215, somewhere in that ballpark, if I remember correctly,
Yeah. And where was that body
which
fat
is the
at?
heaviest I'd ever been.
And where was your body fat at?
That one's a little tougher for me to remember. Uh, that one's a little tougher for me to remember, but I think it was probably around 28%, 20, between 25 and 30%.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, man, I mean, when we had met, you were actually kind of working on, a cardio program at the gym that you had worked out at. And were with another trainer, but kind of wanted to change some things up. And so we were able to connect and implement some different strategies to really push you to that next level, right? And so whenever we started working together, one of the first things that we did was we implemented the weight training right away, right? We got you on a 5-day week weight training split that worked for your schedule, right? Like you were able to get into the gym in the morning and get it done within about 60 to 90 minutes or so, which is the amount of time that you had. And so talk to me about some of the other things that, we implemented in regards to, maybe that you liked with the strength training and also with the nutrition as well. What were some of the things that you enjoyed and saw results with there?
Well, as far as the strength training goes, the main thing I enjoyed was, in years past when I'd gone to the gym, um, I mean, there may be a handful of exercises at the gym that I had done. So I would just go to, whatever that looked like, leg press, leg curls, bench press, shoulder
Right.
press, bicep curls. I mean, really just the basic exercises at the gym. And when you and I started working out together, I learned so many more exercises that, worked the muscles better, more effectively, and it
Mm-hmm.
just made it more fun. Just having a wider variety of things I could do that I hadn't been exposed to before. But probably even more important than that was making sure I was doing the exercises properly. I I was doing all those other, even the core exercises that I thought I knew. My form was really bad in those exercises, or at least uh, I wasn't doing them the way that I needed to do them to get the most out of my workouts. And that
Right.
was something that I learned a lot. You started working with me. In terms of nutrition, the first thing you had me do was download a food tracking app and start tracking my food. And that was the first time I'd ever done that.
Yeah.
And it was very educational in terms of looking down at a screen and seeing how many calories, fat grams, carbs, protein, how much all that I was eating. And the first thing you didn't immediately put me on a diet. You said, don't change your diet. I just want you to log everything you eat and drink. So I did that. But of course, obviously if you're tracking everything you're eating, you're going to change your diet. So I did think a little more about what I was eating, but I still ate what I wanted for the most part. And then after doing that for a couple of weeks and getting in the routine of it, and you and I reviewed where I was in terms of my weight, where my goals were, where my food was, you started slowly dialing in. You started setting thresholds that you wanted me to hit for carbs, protein grams, and fat grams. And that gave me things to challenge myself with during the day. And then slowly over time, just dialing that in and lowering those thresholds to try to get the results I was looking for. And it was great. It was very educational. And, even though it's been, 2.5 years or however long it's been, I'm continuing to track my food, not as strict as I was at that point, but I know now that if I really want to dial in my fitness and my body composition, that's going to require me tracking my food.
Right, 100%, man. And yeah, I mean, just to touch on a couple of things that you had brought up in regards to working out. A lot of times when people are going into the gym, especially if they are in the place that you were at, right? They go in, they do some of the basic movements, and a lot of times there might be some things that are kind of out of alignment with their positioning or their form, and so risk of injury is there, but also really like learning how to be able to dial in those movements to where you can apply the right tension to the muscle fibers, right? To be able to get a much greater response and prevent injury, right? Because ultimately that's the goal in the gym is if you go in the gym and you get hurt, you're screwed, right? Because then you're just going to end up right back to where you were. In regards to the nutrition, I think what I really loved was, like you said, I think a big mistake that a lot of people make whenever they want to lose weight, especially when they reach that kind of threshold in terms of their breaking point of like, I don't want to look like this anymore, is they immediately just go into a restrictive diet, right? And that can be the worst thing to do, rather than really taking some time to get perspective on where you're currently at and then slowly start to make those changes like we did over time. We worked together for quite a while, and over that period of time, we were able to get some really, really good results by adjusting the food according to how your body was responding. And the other thing too is, right, like, you're a big SEC football guy, and, you like to be able to go to your football games and to be able to have a couple drinks and be able to enjoy food with your family. You got a big family. And so I think that's super important to keep in mind too, is the system that we implemented, while you're a little bit more disciplined than most people in terms of keeping things really, really tight, you also had that flexibility as well to be able to enjoy your lifestyle and understand how to keep that moving forward down the line.
No question.
And so, Chris, tell me about some of the results real quick that we were able to see. We worked together for quite a while, and again, like you said, starting at about 215 to 220, probably around like 25-30% body fat, somewhere in that range. Talk to me about some of the results you saw physically, mentally, and kind of where you're at today.
Well, it was pretty remarkable. It was a slow process at first, but the progress, I would go in spurts where I'd lose a little bit of weight, and then I'd see it come off a little quicker. Then I'd kind of hit a plateau, and then I'd lose a little more. But all along, the one thing that stayed pretty consistent was my body fat. I watched it decline, and interesting just to watch kind of my muscle mass stay kind of where it was while my body fat declined, which was exactly kind of what I was hoping for, was to change my body composition. But ultimately, within about 8 months, I want to say, my weight had gotten down to 175, which was a good 40 pounds from where it was prior. Yeah. And my body composition was down below 10%. And, it got down into the single digits, like 7 or 8%, which at that point, it was a little almost like, that's enough. I'm ready
Yeah.
to put a little size on. And it was at that point, you just talked about earlier about getting injured. And that's exactly what happened. You know that well. I tore my bicep and my right arm.
But
Had to
not in
get
the
surgery.
gym. Not in the gym.
Not in the
Not in
gym.
the gym.
No,
No, didn't get hurt lifting weights.
we're not gonna tell how I tore my
No, no.
bicep because it's not the most flattering story. Um, but yeah, but when I injured my arm, it kind of put me on a shelf, and it was very frustrating.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do any upper body exercises, but you were very helpful in terms of just kind of keeping me encouraged, trying to keep me active. It was right around the holidays too. So, that's typically a point where I start losing my discipline. And sure enough, I did put some weight back on and got back up probably around 190.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I was back in the gym, I guess that happened through the holidays. And then when I got back in the gym in the spring, I got refocused. I started kind of slowly being able to do some upper body. And by the time I got to the end of the summer that following year, I was right back where I was prior, which was very rewarding. And, obviously my biggest fear now is another injury because I know how difficult it can be to come back from that. But I'm trying to be careful about what I'm doing. And trying to just stay on the path that I'm on. Setting goals along the way, I've learned, is very important too.
Absolutely.
I never look at where I'm at, whether it be in the mirror, on the scale, or in terms of body composition, and say, there, I've done it. I'm always looking to challenge myself in some way, and try to communicate that with you, and you can kind of set my workouts accordingly.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. And yeah, it was crazy to be able to watch you. Like a lot of people don't ever get to experience what it looks like and feels like to get down into that single digit body fat. Right. And I think at the lowest, you're around like 6 to 7%. And that was at 48, 49 years old too, which is something to brag about for sure, because not many men are ever able to experience that, man. So that was awesome. And Chris, my last question for you is, what would you say right now to somebody that's sitting on the fence, right? Like, so somebody's sitting here watching this right now, we'll say somebody, a guy who might be 48, 50 years old, and, they're overweight, and they kind of felt like you were, where you were at, right? They didn't want to look at themselves. They didn't want to get on the scale, and they just really don't know where to turn. What would you say to somebody that's sitting on the fence right now that's kind of thinking about working with me?
I would say if they're thinking about working with you, they're obviously focused in the right direction.
Yeah.
The hardest part for me was starting the process. That's what I needed when I was kind of re-engaging and rejoining a gym and trying to get some sort of game plan together. The hardest thing to do by yourself is to have a game plan.
Right.
And the thing that I struggle with too is that I would hear from a friend who had lost some weight, what he did, but what he'll tell me would totally contradict what my other friend who lost weight told me. And there's so much information out there on the internet and word of mouth that it's like hard to process all of it.
Right.
And the best part of the whole process for me was connecting with somebody who knows what they're doing. And on a personal level, I can start seeing those results.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it on my own. And, connecting with you is what gave me the focus I needed to reach my goals.
Yeah, man. And that's awesome. And it was a pleasure and an honor to be able to work with you and to be able to watch you transform and still be able to have the opportunity to be able to train you today. And, I think it's super important to, highlight that, what you said, there's so much information out there, right? And to finally be able to just get the right information, apply it to your life, and then watch it transform you is one of the most rewarding feelings to be able to have. And so that's awesome, dude. And Chris, man, I just want to thank you for your time today, man. I know your time is valuable. You're a busy man. And so I want to give that time back to you. So thanks so much for jumping on here, Chris, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sam.
All right. Thanks, Chris.